Hey, it's a beautiful fall day here in the greater Seattle area, and welcome to all of my actual faith subscribers. I don't normally do too many impromptu videos. I have a few on my channel, but most of my content is script driven and really well thought out because I have a few minutes to give some thoughts about a particular question or responding to something in particular. But every once in a while, I like to jump on and just respond to something that's going on in our culture. I'm sitting here and I'm just thinking about everything going on in the world today, especially in the Middle East with Israel and the war, and so many people not knowing how to respond to it or overreacting or maybe running to the wrong sources. Personally, as a pastor, I do pastor Church Bible Baptist Church here in Port Orchard, Washington. And one thing that we have been studying together as a church is the life of Abraham. And this is so fitting with everything that's going on right now in the world, because Abraham gives us insight into what God promised Israel. But it's not that easy. It's not cut and dry, and many struggle with it because we have to ask ourselves fundamental questions about how God will fulfill his promises, how he has fulfilled his promises. We recently went through the book of Genesis in the life of Abraham in chapter 15 and studied where God renewed his covenant with Abraham. And he renewed it with an unusual covenant in our eyes today, but in the time of Abraham, a blood covenant, a sacrifice, bringing animals, dividing them in two, and then the parties of the contract walking in the midst of that blood sealing the covenant. And we see that in this chapter, God himself shows up as a flaming fire, as a burning pot, much like he does in the presence of Moses, as he is a burning bush. And he also followed Israel as a pillar of fire throughout their exodus. It's amazing how God works, and his presence shows us that he's real. He's always been consistent in his revelation from the Old Testament and into the New Testament. And I want us to understand something that God tries to express to Abraham that's important for us as Christians today, no matter what denomination you practice. That today, the variables aren't as easy to understand as we would like them to be. I'm sorry for the wind noise in the background. It is a little bit of a windy day. While it's beautiful, you might hear some wind noise, so I apologize for that. But I want us to understand that today it's not easy, because when we look at this problem in the Middle East right now, we have to ask ourselves questions such as, who are the Jews of today? Would God accept the way Jews are categorizing themselves in the way that they are today? For instance, during the time of Jesus, he didn't look at some Jews as being full-blooded Jews or half-blooded Jews. It was important that Jesus Christ came through the lineage of Abraham, the physical seed. But as Jesus Christ came on the scene, on this earth, he came to show us that it doesn't matter whether you're male or female, Jew or Gentile, bond or free, all can be made whole in Jesus Christ. And that's very important for Christians today to understand, that it's not just about segregating who is of Jewish descent and who is not of Jewish descent, and who that land belongs to, and who should have it today. The other question too would be, how much of that land is, quote, Israel's? Because the way that God describes it to Abraham in Genesis 15 is far larger than what Israel has today. And so if we follow that logic all the way through, that means Israel is going to go on a major conquest over the coming years to claim what they believe is rightfully theirs. So the question is, when Israel came together in 1948, I believe it was May of that year, was that of God's doing or was that of man's doing? Was that a political strategy? Was it an economic strategy? Or was that God's plan? Or perhaps is God's plan to regather Israel in a future time, according to his timing, according to his purposes? These are questions we must personally answer through our study in the scripture and make sure that we're not running to our favorite prophet, that we are not looking to our favorite YouTube teacher. I enjoy being on YouTube and I appreciate it for what it is to help maybe answer questions. That's why I answer quick questions and make it precise. I don't have a whole lot of time to answer these things. I'm a full-time pastor, I'm a full-time businessman, and I don't have time to go in and try to answer every question in depth. I'm thankful for those people that do have a ministry for that. But I want to say we need to be careful. There's a reason why God gives us a local church, why he gives us accountability in our lives, that we don't just run to sources that go unchecked or perhaps aren't thinking through things not only logically, biblically, but also practically. So these are some things to consider. I encourage you to go back, read Genesis chapter 15, go back and read Galatians chapter 3, go back and read Romans chapter 4. Look through the context of some of the scripture and understand what God was revealing to Abraham. And then we have to ask ourselves the question, are we going to read every prophecy that's in the Old Testament scripture into current events today? Are we going to start causing division among nations, or are we going to allow God to be God and move when he moves? And in the meantime, be bearers of the gospel, preach the gospel, bring the gospel to those that need it, because ultimately, whether you're Jew, whether you're a Palestinian, whether you're a Gentile, American, it doesn't matter who you are. We like to categorize ourselves by ethnicities or nationalities, but all can be made free in Jesus Christ. And the bottom line is that we need to be praying for peace where peace is possible, and we need to be praying for, most importantly, for people to receive humbly the gospel of Christ, and that we may learn of these things together. Hope that was helpful for you today. Again, I know it's a little bit impromptu, but I hope that it will get you thinking. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are, because I'm sure you've got some things on your mind as well. And by the way, if you don't subscribe to this channel, Actual Faith, I like to end each of my videos with this short quip. And that is, actual faith is trusting and believing the unknown because of the known. It keeps us thinking about the fact that faith keeps us trusting and believing in God even when we don't know what's ahead. But God has always fulfilled his promises, and he will continue to fulfill them. Hope you have a great weekend. Thank you.